December 2005. After the incident with the 10 billion yen, I started a new chapter of my life. Having left the Tojo clan, I spent my days with Haruka in peace and quiet. We had our ups and downs, but we did our best to support each other. I couldn't take losing any more loved ones. Unfortunately, I couldn't give her the peaceful life we both wanted, because when we visited the graves of our loved ones, the next chapter in our struggle began.
実は近江連合の合田会長と杯を交わそうと思っております。
杯?
After I stepped down, I appointed Terada as the Tojo clan's 5th chairman. To avoid a war with the largest Yakuza group in Western Japan, the Omi Alliance. Terada was considering a truce and sought out my advice, though he never got the chance to broker peace. Terada was shot. As he struggled to remain conscious, with his last breath, he asked me to carry out the truce with the Omi Alliance in his place. The Tojo clan had grown weak, but Terada had been a beacon of hope. His loss could prove fatal for the organization. I was left with no choice but to return to Kamurocho. And to protect the Tojo clan, there was someone I had to meet with. He was a young man, and an active member of my former organization, the Dojima family, as well as the only son of its patriarch, Sohei Dojima. His name was Daigo Dojima.
登場会に戻ってくれ。お前が必要だ。
If negotiations with the Omi went sideways, I knew for a fact that I'd be a dead man. So I thought, if anything were to happen to me, the only one I'd trust to run the Tojo clan would be none other than Daigo.
1年前組をめちゃくちゃにしたのはあんただろうが。
そうだ。だから俺はその責任を取りに来た。
But
登場会を頼む。
ダメだ。俺も行く。
何？
俺はな、関西に借りがあるんだよ。
大悟。
何を言おうが無駄だ。たとえあんたが行かなくても、俺は行くぜ。
And with that, Daigo and I left for Osaka to negotiate a truce between the Tojo clan and the Omi. Sotenbori, Osaka. We were set to meet with the Omi Alliance chairman, Jin Goda. Then, in Osaka's red light district, by a twist of fate, I encountered him.
おい、女子の数が少ないやないけ。支配人はどこにおるんや。
ちょっと目合わせたらあかん。この辺で有名な薬剤師なんやって。
A man named Ryuji Goda, second chairman of the Goryu clan, a branch of the Omi Alliance, also known as the Dragon of Kansai.
極道の世界で竜と呼ばれる男は一匹でええんですわ。あんたもそう思いますやろ。
まあな。
これも何かの縁や。 ついでにもっとええ話教えさせてもらいます。今夜の12時ちょうどカムロ町に派手な花火がドカンと一発打ち上がるんです。
花火。
Just as Ryuji said, that night, the Kazuma family office in Kamurocho had been bombed.
これが花火。
By then, it was clear. Ryuji Goda wanted war. But his father was different. Jin Goda approved of the truce between Tojo and Omi. But in doing so, he painted a target on his back.
龍二、近江と東条が五分の杯やと。8に91の間違いとちゃうんか。
お前何しに来た？お前は執行部の人間やない。
やれ！
何をする？
お前の狙いはやはり戦争なのか。
そうや、西と東の大戦争。それこそがわしの狙いや。それともう一つ。
俺か。
Ryuji Goda was after two things. First, to control all of Japan through the Goryu clan. And second, to fight and ultimately defeat me. The Dragon of Dojima. He was relentless on his warpath against the Tojo clan, and went as far as to mutiny and kidnap his own father to stop the truce. Daigo and I worked together to rescue Chairman Goda, and to take down Ryuji. On the way there, I encountered an unexpected roadblock.
本部内の全員連行や。
はい。
府警4課の佐山薫です。あなたを傷害の現行犯で逮捕します。
And that was how I met Kaoru Sayama, the Yakuza huntress. The Omi Alliance's internal conflict in Osaka, the bombing in Kamurocho. Though two seemingly separate and distinct events, one detective was determined to uncover the missing link.
あれからもう20年以上経つのか。
They called him Killer Kawara for leaning on his gun during investigations, a dangerous man. And age had only made his wits sharper. He and his former partner, Date-san, were tasked with investigating an underground organization. And their target was none other than the owner of the Stardust Host Club, Kazuki. At the time, I was still in Osaka. My hands forced, I cooperated with Sayama in her investigation. She took advantage of her authority as a police officer and kept me in custody while having me contact members of the Omi Alliance. She wanted information about the power struggle within the organization. But I soon found out. Sayama had an ulterior motive for approaching me.
何遍も言うてるやんか。あんたの両親とヤクザは関係ないって。
だったら教えてよ。私の本当の親は誰なの？はあ、もうこの話はええわ。とにかく私はあの桐生一馬を追いかける。
なんでや？
あの男が 登場界の人間だからよ。
登場界？
彼の身辺保護をすれば登場界に近づける。そうすれば過去に何があったか調べることができるわ。
Her true intentions were to get answers to the questions she had regarding her past. Who were her birth parents? And why did she have to lose them? Why were they killed? She suspected that the Tojo clan were somehow involved. And in order to seek out the truth, she used me.
お前の気持ち、わからないでもない。
え？
俺にも隠された過去があったんだ。
隠された過去？
ああ。だが俺はそれを知ってしまったことで苦しかった。知らない方が良かったとさえ思った。もしかしたら人間には知らなくてもいい過去があるんじゃないのか。
それは自分の過去を知っている人間のセリフよ。
そうかもしれないな。
I knew how painful it is to lose your parents, and how hard it can be growing up an orphan. Maybe that was why I couldn't leave her well alone. I was drawn to her.
正直怖いわ、過去を知るのって。でもいいの。それが私が選んだ道だから。
そうか。なら俺を利用すればいい。俺に張り付いて登場界を探れ。
もしあなたが関係してたら。
そん時は迷わず俺に向かって引き金を引けばいい。あんたはその相手を許すつもりはないんだろう。
そうね。そうするわ。
So, there we were, a detective and a Yakuza. We came to an understanding and teamed up for the sake of our goals. We pressed forward, despite knowing that the road ahead would only lead to tragedy. My search for Jin Goda brought me from east to west. And in the process, Sayama's past began to unravel itself. Her investigation brought her closer to the truth, and brought to light her connection to an incident that occurred 20 years ago. And one that, as I found out, Kazuma-san and I were involved in. Meanwhile, in Kamurocho, an organization sought revenge for what transpired 20 years ago and set their plans in motion. The Jingwan Mafia, a foreign crime syndicate, forced out of Kamurocho by the Dojima family. Their remnants had become desperate and began to move, thirsty for blood. But for 20 long years, Kawara-san had been keeping an eye on them. And when he became aware of their plans, he passed on the details to me and Sayama. We headed to the Millennium Tower to confront the Jingwan Mafia. There, we discovered the ringleader, Kurahashi, an active police chief. And in pursuit of revenge, both Kurahashi and Kawara-san died by one another's hands.
助けてくれてありがとう。
初めてだな。父親らしいことができたのは。懐かしいな。お前の手を握るのは。
お父さん。
ありがとう。
At last, Sayama learned the truth behind her past. As he lay dying, Kawara-san confessed that he was her biological father, before closing his eyes, finally at peace. Meanwhile, the Dragon of Kansai made his move, and threw down the gauntlet, declaring the site of what will be our final battle. So I put aside the tension between the Tojo clan and the Omi alliance to do what needed to be done. I headed to where Ryuji was waiting for me, so that we could finally settle things man to man.
よっしゃなら一丁派手に極道の花探せようやないか。
But after our showdown, things took an unexpected turn. When he, of all people, walked in. Terada, a man I thought to have been dead. In that incident 20 years ago, Kazuma-san had shown mercy and spared the lives of some members of the Jingwan Mafia. Terada was one of them. Consumed by his need for revenge, Terada would go to any lengths to see it realized, including faking his own death, all to set his plan in motion.
あなたたちを倒し、あの爆弾にスイッチを入れれば全てが終わるんだ。桐生さん、死んでもらいます。
The fight that ensued was tragic. I felt as though Terada had been prepared to die. As though he knew his fate the moment he appeared before me. He met his end after being shot, an act of betrayal, by Takashima, the real mastermind. And with his dying breath, he said,
桐生さん、最後に俺を信じて。
Not long after that, a bomb began to tick down. That was when Takashima panicked, and Ryuji seized the opportunity to end things himself. And so, the curtain fell on the war between East and West, Tokyo and Osaka, with heavy hearts. But there was still one more thing I had to do. One more thing I had to make right.
早いとこ蹴りつけようやないか。
やめてよ、ここから逃げましょう。
断る。俺にはまだやることがある。
December 24th, 2006. At long last, this trying, difficult journey of mine had finally come to an end.